This question from Eric. I'm training for the New York Marathon. I struggle to run long distances more than 13 miles at a reasonably good pace and without needing to stop and catch my breath or drink some water. For example, he says, this week I ran 12 and a half miles nonstop, felt pretty good. Then I had to stop for 7 minutes to take a break. After the break, I ran 3 more miles, but I needed to run 1 mile at a time and took a break for a few minutes without my pacing slowing down. Please share some tips on how to get between mile 13 and mile 26, which, yeah, you're talking about some hardcore miles there.
Well, congratulations for getting in the New York City Marathon. I believe it's a time qualification as well as a lottery. So that's awesome. Hopefully you'll just go and enjoy it and finish, and that should be the number one goal. I think it's amazing. It's definitely a bucket list of mine in the last few years. So it sounds like you're trying to maybe force a pace the first 13 miles, and it's maybe a little bit unrealistic and you're going too hard. The top two things that'll cause someone to slow down or bonk or be dehydrated is the pacing and nutrition. So it sounds like you're just starting too fast and you're not eating or drinking enough. So what I recommend is make sure you do a fitness test to set your training zones and that you're doing the proper training zone details depending on the purpose of the long run. For you, the purpose could be just endurance based, so making sure you're at your current endurance zone, whether it's pace, heart rate, or rate of perceived effort. If your goal is to do a certain pace, whether it's marathon pace, tempo pace, threshold pace, again, make sure you're doing the correct pace that matches those type of zones. So for you specifically, I'd say slow down. You definitely want to, if you're up to 13 miles already and you're trying to go beyond 13 miles, keeping the same pace, number one, slow down. Number two, make sure you're carrying like some sort of hydration bottle or hydration pack and you're hydrating, because if you live in a hot, humid environment, that's definitely going to impact your pace and how much you fade towards the end of a longer training session. And make sure you're intaking some calories. What I first recommend is going to the New York Marathon website and see what type of course nutrition they're going to offer and start practicing with the on-course nutrition of the marathon. And I would, general recommendations are going to be you're intaking, maybe up to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour. That's the recommendation for triathlon training. For just the marathon, I would say, you're going to be in that 30 to 40 grams per hour to get you through the marathon. So again, it's just a matter of starting out slower and making sure you're taking in calories, because it sounds like based on his email that he didn't hydrate the first 12 and a half miles. So he had to stop and hydrate and he was already behind. And then he was trying to maintain the same pace. So he would go a mile at the same pace and then he'd stop because it was probably just too intense. And then one other thing I wanted to mention is, making sure you're loaded and hydrated the day before your long run. So having a nice quality dinner of protein, carbohydrates, and you're hydrated going into the next day long run.
In all the triathletes that you coach, those longer endurance athletes, whether it's a half Ironman or a full Ironman, and the runners, where have you noticed the biggest sticking point for athletes? When do they have that moment? Is it 22 miles or is it 20 miles? And whether it's mental or a physical hurdle?
Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of this could be a mindset thing. For like an Ironman marathon, 16 up to 18 miles, it could start then. If you're experienced and you're trained, then probably mile 22. Again, I'm going by my experience. Sometimes I'm just shot at mile 18. Sometimes I can make it to mile 22. And at that point, you're like, okay, I got 4 miles left. I like to break up the marathon in sections because it's a little bit mentally easier for me if I break it up into 5Ks or 5 miles or 10K sections, because I've done plenty of 5Ks, 5 milers, and 10Ks in training. So it's just a matter of saying, oh, I get to do another, after the first 10K, here's my other 10K. Where would I be running if this was a training run 10K? And so, yeah, there's a huge mental component in a marathon.
It's a different beast altogether, too, a different animal when you're talking about the marathon at the end of an Ironman versus the 22-mile mark during a straight out open marathon, because you've depleted so much calories, hydration in that first, I don't know, 10 hours of the Ironman race or 11 hours of the race. When you get to that point where you're going, oh, 18. I know it's only, or 20. It's only 6 more miles, yet I've been going all day and I got nothing left. Whereas, hey, I've only been running for a couple of hours and I can really, make it for the next 6 miles.
Right. And that just reminded me of again, based on Eric's goal, is making sure your marathon goal pace is realistic, again, based on your current training and at your current endurance / tempo pace. You don't want to be running your long run at your 5K pace. That's obviously too fast, and that's why you're not able to sustain that pace. And so making sure the time pace is realistic for you. Because a marathon, if you're going for it, like someone like me, if I were to just do a marathon, I'm going to be going at a pretty good clip. And so, bonking or making it to mile 22 before you kind of start to fade or bonk is due to the intensity level. Whereas in an Ironman marathon, the intensity level is going to be a little bit lower than a competitive flat out marathon.